So, how many of you love estimates? Spending time talking about what is this story about? What should we do? What tasks do we need to have? Whose help we need? And then giving it a number. How many of you love the estimation process? All right, a few. Very good, very good. How many of you love to have a good argument about whether a story is a 3 or a 5? All right, good. So I have something for you. This talk is not for you. But you might find it interesting nevertheless. So I would like to start the talk by giving you a gift. So first of all, thank you very much for being here. It's very important for me that people who have your jobs, your responsibility, are looking for new ways to manage software development. Our society runs on software. And if you don't believe me, just go into a Japanese toilet. Japanese toilets have very complex software. I'm not kidding. Everything runs on software. The trams run on software, the cars run on software, which we just heard about, apparently. Intelligent enough software to know when it's being tested. I wonder if our Jenkins are intelligent enough to know when they're being tested. And I wanted to give you this gift because I believe that there's a change that needs to happen in our industry. And that's what this talk is about. It's about the change that I believe needs to happen in our industry. So if you sign up today, and it's only today, you will get the book for free. No need to pay for it. That's $27 right there. You just made the day, right? At least part of the conference ticket is paid for. So I'm going to talk about 10 principles for software development. Now, I'm not going to say that these are the most important 10 principles or these are the only 10 principles. These are just 10, right? You can come up with your own 10. And in fact, I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to write down what you believe software development is about, because that's the only way we are going to improve our profession. That's the only way we will get software development up there with launching rockets into space. Right now, software development, as we know it, the management practices we use are awfully inadequate. And we'll talk about one specifically, estimation. Now, for those of you that raised your hands when I asked if you love estimates, this part of the talk is not for you. NoEstimates is for you if this is how you look when you enter an estimation meeting. What? Again? Didn't we do this like 2 weeks ago? Or if you think that estimates are actually booby traps. They are armed, dangerous, and can explode in your face. Right? If you feel like that guy over there when you're giving an estimate to someone, NoEstimates is for you. But it's also for you if you care more about making people happy through the work that you do than you care about satisfying some bureaucratic process that, as we will know today, does not really give us any value. If you want to focus on value, if you want to focus on what the customers want, what their needs are, and how we can help them the most, then NoEstimates is for you. Who knows this train? Anybody? It's from Japan, just like the toilets. Okay, some of you know. So this is the Shinkansen. What's peculiar about this train is that it's always on time. In fact, if we look at the stats, last year it had an average of 54 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, delay in the whole year. 54 seconds was the average delay for the Shinkansen train. And that includes natural catastrophes. How can you do that? How can you be so darn predictable that you can be 54 seconds on average wrong in trips that take hours, right? It gets even better because in, I believe it was 97, they were 14 seconds on average off the schedule. 14, the whole year. 14 seconds on average. That's mind-boggling. I mean, I don't know how trains work in Serbia. Somehow I thought you guys were going to do that. So, you know what happens? I come from Finland. We have this thing, and our train company, which is also state-owned, I imagine the Serbia train company is also state-owned, right? Yeah. So in Finland it is as well. So in Finland we have this thing with the VR. VR is the company. And we normally say that they only have 4 problems, right? If those 4 problems were eliminated, they could always have their trains on time. And those 4 problems are summer, fall, winter, and spring. There's always something going wrong, right? And what happens to me when I go to the train is that I'm nervous. It's like I have a meeting in, I don't know, let's say, imagine I'm going to Tokyo. I have a meeting in Tokyo. If VR would be the company running these trains, I would go there with at least an hour's buffer, right? At least one train in the middle so that if the first one doesn't show up, I can always take the next one, right? And that takes time, that takes effort, right? It's not simple to organize your life around a non-working train system. I don't know about you guys, but I used to actually do daily train trips. I had an office, well, it wasn't my office, but the company I worked for had an office about 250 kilometers away where I lived, so I had to take the train. And it was a stressful moment. First, I was stressed that the train might be ahead of schedule. That's really, really nerving. And then when I got there, I looked at the sign and, you know, sometimes it was on time, which was good. Sometimes it was half an hour late, 15 minutes late, and once I was 2 hours late in a 2-hour trip, right? This happens. And you can't be calm. You can't be collected when you're in a situation like that. When you take this train, the Shinkansen, you can decide to go half an hour earlier and stroll by that manga shop in Tokyo that you wanted to see all along, right? You can just decide. You have a meeting, you can take the right train for that meeting. You don't need to go one day in advance and sleep in those, you know, cubicles that they call hotels in Tokyo. I don't know if you guys ever been, but it's like your luggage doesn't fit, right? So that's the kind of difference that being predictable makes. The Shinkansen is predictable. I don't need to stress. I choose the train I take. I know it will be on time unless, you know, a nuclear power station is flooded by a tsunami, but otherwise I'm going to be fine. In the other side of the world, in Finland where I live, if I want to take the train, I'm going to make sure that I have one train in the middle between the time I need to be there and the time I take the train, so that if the first train doesn't show up, I always have a second train. And if it looks like the second train doesn't want to show up, I'll take the taxi, right? You have to build all of this very expensive, very stressful plan Bs into your life because you're not predictable. And that's exactly what we do in software. We should be building a system that, like the Shinkansen, delivers always on time. Not that maybe it will deliver on time, not if we work harder it will deliver on time, not if, you know, department A, B, and C, and D, and F do their thing, we will deliver on time. That's just waste of our lives. That's like the biggest waste in the universe today is our time. You never get time back. It's like if you are 1 hour late, that hour will never come back. If your project is 1 hour late, that hour will never come back. You will have to do other things like cut scope, reduce the amount of things you need to do, cut quality. No, God forbid, that's not a good idea because that will cost even more later on. So this brings us to the first principle that I wanted to share with you guys. Trust your process or change your process. Because this is what the Shinkansen designers did. They said, no hope in hell, we're going to make this work with the old system. So they built a totally new system, a system that was built from the ground up to be predictable. That's why the Shinkansen is predictable. It's not because they're suddenly much better at driving trains. They just created the conditions that allow them to always be predictable. They built a completely new trunk in the lines so that this train doesn't need to wait for any other train. It doesn't have dead animals on the tracks because the tracks are protected. It doesn't cross any roads, so there's no danger of a car being stuck in the line. They removed all the risks so that they could be on time. And that's what changing your process means. It means if you are stressed, if you go to work and you're worried that you're not going to deliver on time, if you go to work and you're worried that other people will not deliver on time, then change the process. Eliminate that. You know, I have a lot of fun talking about cross-functional teams. Who's in a cross-functional team? Good. Do you guys have marketing in your team? Very good. Do you have sales in your team? Do you have customer support in your team? Do you have pre-sales in your team? So it's only half cross-functional, right? Because the customer doesn't care that your front-end developers need some tools and your back-end developers need other tools and your salespeople are traveling around the world and your customer people actually only have 5 minutes to take your call because that's their target and they're not allowed to take the call for more than 5 minutes. Your customer doesn't care. Your customer cares about value, right? And the cross-functionality of teams is one of the aspects that is affected by this principle. If you need to deliver regularly, everybody involved in the delivery needs to be working together. And if you think it's hard to pull off, I have a book to recommend. The book is called Team of Teams, written by General McChrystal, published a few months ago. And they have a cross-functional team. Get this, 7,000 people on that team. 7,000. No, that's not a mistake. 7,000 people on one team. How the hell can they work? They figured it out. You know why they figured it out? Because they didn't have a choice. There were people dying. There were thousands of people dying. Their own men, this is the American armed forces, their own men and women were being killed because they didn't have a process that was working. They didn't really have a choice. They had to change the process. Read the book, amazing book on how to create worldwide distributed, completely different people involved, all kinds of countries, all kinds of cultures. They built a 7,000 people cross-functional team that had daily meetings 6 days a week. Daily meetings 6 days a week. How many of you have daily meetings 5 times a week? Very good, very good. It's getting better because if I would have this question about 2 or 3 years ago, probably half of you would say, yeah, we have daily meetings like twice a week. How can we build teams like that if we're not talking to each other, right? Here's a project. This project has 2 phases. This is a good old school project. It has the development phase and what I like to call the desperately testing and fixing phase. Let me ask you a question. If you are the team for this project and you are right here at the peak of the line of bugs accumulating over your shoulders, when is the project going to be done? Never. Okay, that's a very smart thing to say. Obviously, it's not reality, but that's what it looks like. It looks like it's never going to be delivered. So then we have this huge drop in number of bugs open in the system. No magic, we just erased them from the system. Felt good. It wasn't very good for the customer, but it felt good for us. And then look at how the blue line goes. It goes a little bit down, then it starts going up and up and up and up and up again. Obviously, it's no surprise because the more you test, the more bugs you find. That's it. There's a direct correlation between test time and bugs found. So what happened here? Why did we release that project? No miracles. What happened was simple. The top management came down to our room and said, guys, you either release this now or we're going to cancel the project. So in this context, what usefulness do estimates have? In this company, we looked at many projects. We looked at small projects, medium projects, large projects. Here's what we found. Large projects, average release time, i.e. desperately testing and fixing phase, average 90 days. Medium-sized projects, we looked at how long it took to desperately test and fix. Average 3 months. We looked at small projects. Okay, maybe this is a bit different. The same 3 months. Of course, I don't believe in coincidences, so we looked further into it and we found out that all projects followed the same dynamics. First, they were feature complete, then we were struggling with the bugs, and then 3 months later, after we started desperately testing and fixing, top management would come down and say, either you release now or we cancel the project. So again, why did we estimate those projects? The release date was determined by one factor and one factor alone, the level of patience of top management. So why did we estimate? So principle 2, shorten the feedback cycle. That's one of the problems with this kind of projects, right? Desperately testing and fixing phase shouldn't happen at all. You should be delivering value until the end of the project. And if you think that's impossible, I'm sure we can have a very interesting discussion over beer. But that's what we should be doing. And if we do that, we shorten the feedback cycle. Here's what happens when you shorten the feedback cycle. Something goes wrong, you know it. You deliver something to the customer, it doesn't solve their problem, you know it. You show something to the product owner, they don't like it, you know it. You tell the top management, we have delivered this much, and then they can tell you already now whether they want you to release or not instead of waiting 3 months, right? Shortening the feedback cycle is a core principle of agile software development. How many of you do, or at least try to, do agile software development? Okay. If there's anything you need to know about agile software development, is this right here. You can forget about all of the rest. If you do this, everything will fall into place. So the other problem that I hear is that, oh, well, but we need to give these estimates to our clients, right? I even hear some ironic comments like, you're playing with other people's money. You have to be accountable. Well, let's look at the accountability of estimates then, shall we? Let's hold estimates accountable in our industry. Here's one idea. J.B. Rainsberger, great talk, OrDev 2013. The talk is about accidental complication. What's accidental complication? The cost and duration of any piece of software will be a product of the essential complication, which is basically how difficult is the problem you're trying to solve, right? If you're trying to send a space shuttle to the moon, that's relatively easy. If you're trying to calculate taxes in most of Europe, that's going to be really, really hard, right? So that's the essential complication, the things you need to know in order to crack that nut. But then we have accidental complication. An accidental complication goes like this. We're in a hurry. Okay, let's cut corners. Let's not do this part of the testing. Let's not do continuous integration for this project. Let's prepare that for the next project. Oh, let's skip the code reviews. That's what builds accidental complication. And at some point, accidental complication will be so large that adding a user to the database requires you to refactor the whole ball of mud you have, because there's 555 places where we're adding users to the database, and they're all incompatible with the new way to add users to the database. I don't know if this is popular with you guys, but I'm working with a client that is rewriting their whole platform for the 3rd time in 3 years. Right? I don't know if you guys have ever gone through a rewrite project, but there's only one rule for rewrite projects. Don't do it. But this is accidental complication right there. This customer believes that it's better to rewrite the project than to actually remove the accidental complication that was built over the years. What does that tell you? It tells you that accidental complication can be so large that it's actually the most significant part of the estimates you need to give. Now, here's one thing. How many of you use story points? Okay, majority of people using story points. That's a relative estimation technique. Relative as in, if this story which we did was 15 points, and this story is similar to that one, then this one should also be 15 points. Well, that forgets one small problem. How much accidental complication have we accumulated since we did that other story? None. Awesome. Work for this guy. And if that's the case, then relative estimation cannot work. It just cannot work by principle, right? There's no theory claiming that something that was built, let's say 2 years ago, can be similar to something that is being built now, because the accidental complication levels will be totally different. I mean, if you're really good, the accidental complication levels will actually be lower. But if you're the average software development organization, accidental complication might be 10 times larger than it was 2 years ago. Right? So how can we even plan using techniques that, if you just look at the darn theory, they can't work. Yet most agile teams are using story points these days. But in theory, it can't work. How do we make it work? There's this phenomena in software. We take our queues very, very seriously. And when I mean seriously, I mean like how many of you have removed items from your backlog or bug tracking system that are 1 year old or more? 2 years old or more? 5 years old or more? I have removed hundreds of items that were 5 years old or more from our bug tracking system and our backlog systems. Right? That's a queue. So exactly how long was that item that is now 5 years in the backlog supposed to take to develop? It doesn't matter. It's been in the queue for 5 years. Who the hell cares about the estimate? Right? And that's what our work keeps on doing. Our work keeps on being put into queues. Right? And queues are actually the majority of the time that work spends in our software development system. If you look at touch time, i.e. the amount of time that we spend actively working on certain items, in very, very good companies, about 20%. On the average companies, 10% or less. Right? So when you say it's going to take 2 weeks, do you mean 2 weeks of work or 2 weeks of queuing? Because if it is 2 weeks of queuing, then you're probably okay with that estimate. But if it's 2 weeks of work, dude, it could be there for at least 20 weeks in the queue, perhaps even more, right? Queues matter for us to know when things get done. Yet, when we estimate, we very conveniently forget they exist. So, some people still argue that we can be good at estimates. So let's look at the reality. This is the Chaos Report study from 1994 as published by Steve McConnell in Software Estimation book. 2004, 80% of projects late or failed. 80, right? It's not like 20%, it's 80, 80. Chaos Report 1995. If we look at projects that were 51% or more late from their original estimate, it's 68% of projects. 68, nearly 70% of projects are 50% or more late. And look at this number, 200 to 400%, 10% of the projects are 200 to 400% late compared to their original estimates. It doesn't get much better when we look at more recent years. Chaos Report 2009, average time overrun, 63%. Average, that means that some were a lot more late than 63%. Chaos Report 2011, still the same 63%, and this is totally coherent with the data that I've seen in companies that I work at. Now, I'm sure that some of you are saying, Chaos Report, come on, that's bad science, right? Like, we're much better than that. Are we? Gartner, survey of project failure. It's not about being late, it's project failure, 2012. 20 to 28% of projects fail. It's not that they're late, it's that they don't deliver value, right? Because there's a lot of projects here that are late, but still deliver some value. Of the large systems that are completed, about 66% experience schedule delays and cost overrun. And this is Capers-Jones writing for the Journal of Defense Software Engineering. So when the guys from the military tell you that they're better at estimation, show them this data. 66% schedule delays and cost overrun. Traditional projects, this is now Scott Ambler, survey of project success. Traditional projects, 53% failed or challenged. Now, of course, Agile is much better, right? We know that. 40%. Much better? That's probably within the error of the survey anyway. And this is the one that really, really kicked in. When I read this, I was like, what? 17% of large IT projects go so bad that they threaten the very existence of the company. Think about that for a second. They threaten the very existence of the company.
Volkswagen diesel motors?
They probably had very good estimates, though. Still didn't help them, right? So there's more data coming soon. If you sign up for the book or at noestimatesbook.com, you will get that report when it's available. But here's the principle. Believe the data, not the estimates. Because we actually estimate that we are good at estimates. But in reality, we suck at it. I mean, some of you might be very good, but we as an industry, we suck at it. Really, really bad. We shouldn't be allowed near an estimate in our industry. It's life-threatening to be near estimates in some cases. Here's what the good Conte, Dunmore, and Shen considered a good estimate in 1986. So even if we could be good at estimates, what would that mean? And they say a good estimate is something that is within 25% of the actual results, 75% of the time. I'll translate this because sometimes the numbers can be a bit complex. So here's how it goes. You go to the bank, right? And the person in the bank says, I have a great investment opportunity for you. Oh, really? So tell me more. I want to know more. Am I going to make a lot of money? Is it sure? Is it safe? It says, perfectly safe. So it's like this. You give me 100,000 euros or dollars, whatever you prefer. 100,000 of those. And I guarantee I will not lose more than 25,000 of those. And that's with a 75% chance. They don't tell you what happens in the other 25% of the chances because maybe it's a lot worse. So think about this. Would you ever make an investment with those odds? When we go to the bank, we want to hear, your investment will grow 10% a year for the foreseeable future, because that's what's been doing in the last 150 years. Oh, that sounds good. I mean, it's not great, but 10%, not too shabby. But when you go to the bank and they tell you, we're going to lose money for you. Lose money as a service. Somebody should write that up. Think about this. And this is how we're running our businesses? Seriously? We're basing our business decisions, our most important, most critical business decisions, on a tool that has this results when it works? Use alternatives to estimate-driven decision-making. There's many of them. You can see some of those on the NoEstimatesbook.com website, and there's plenty of those out there on the net. We are, as a community, the No Estimates community is producing a lot of knowledge, so it's even hard to keep up with what's going on. So there's a lot of good ideas out there of how to make decisions. In the book, there will be interviews with software developers, CEOs, project managers, and they talk about their experiences about making decisions without estimates. It can be done, right? When people tell you it cannot be done, don't believe them. Try it out. Here's another one, and this argument, I don't know about you guys, but this argument is where I get like, oh my God, how stupid was I? Because I was a traditional project manager. I was taught to believe estimates. I was taught to make darn good estimates. But here's the thing. This project here, project number 2 or project number 3, which have almost perfect estimate accuracy. What were they about? I have no clue. I don't remember. I don't know why they're there. There's just 17 projects that happened between 2001 and 2003 at a company where I worked. They're just there. I have no clue what they are. But look at this guy. Project number 17, that was 200% late compared to the estimate made when we knew all of the requirements. 200% late. Here's the thing. Project 17 changed the company. It created a new business model. It found new customers. It created a recurring revenue stream that is now, for that company, more than 50% of their revenues. And when you look at this and you see, what? Are you telling me that estimates and being accurate at estimates are not at all correlated with value produced? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that even if you could get better at estimates, that would mean 0 for your company. It wouldn't have any freaking impact on your revenues. Here's a story. I was working with a client, and I don't know about you guys, but I hate backlogs. Who's with me? Who's with me? Come on. No, not too many people. Okay, let's see what you think after this story. So I was working with this company. They had hundreds, literally hundreds of items in their backlog. The team was like up to here with backlog item discussions. What? Another button to be moved 5 pixels to the right? Another color to be changed? Another string to be updated? What? We're intelligent people. We don't need to do this. Right? That's how they thought and how they felt. They felt totally demotivated with the way they were working because backlogs drive you to mind numbness. Backlogs are a waste of your intelligence. I can give you a few alternatives if you don't believe it can be done, but let's get back to the story. So these guys were really totally demotivated. The product owner, brilliant guy, said, okay, let's kill the backlog for a sprint, shall we? Like this sprint, we're just going to do something that has business impact. So we got together, we decided, okay, what is that something we're going to do? And we picked up one area that we wanted to develop. They were an e-commerce provider, so it was about conversion. Okay, cool. So what do we do? Let's do that thing that everybody does. What is that? Like share on Facebook. Yeah, let's do that. That's great because it brings a lot more people to the site. And you know, if we do it right, it's going to convert much more. Okay, let's do that. And then somebody said, well, yeah, but I normally buy on the bus, right? I mean, I don't actually buy because I hate putting my credit card data in front of everybody, but I browse for products on the bus. So why don't we do something like send this offer to my email or something so that I can buy it when I get home? Okay, let's do that. So we spent 2 weeks doing it. After 2 weeks, it went live. And then 2 days later, everybody was like, okay, so what's the data? Did we get a lot of shares on Facebook? And there was quite a few. Did we get a lot of people to come from Facebook to our website? Not too many. But then somebody looked at the data and said, hey, wait a minute, we actually made some money. What? Where is that? Yeah, here. There was a couple of guys that used the share by email feature and they actually bought. Oh, that means that feature works. Let's do a little bit more of it. So during the next sprint, we did a few changes to that, not very many, just a few hours, and we went live. This was November 2014. July 2015, I get an email from the product owner. That feature is generating at about half a million a year right now. It was 250 or 260,000 euros in the first 7 months of the year. About $500,000 a year. And that was 2 weeks of work in a feature that wasn't in anybody's mind. Nobody had thought about that before because they were, you guessed it, too busy going through the backlog. Right? A friend of mine once coined this term, and I love him for that. He coined the term being a slave to the backlog. If you ever feel like you're a slave to the backlog, you're doing it wrong. Because our value is not in producing more code. Our value is not in producing more features. How we bring value to the companies that we work in is to make a difference in the people that use that product. And that feature made a difference, and the money proved it. That feature has a conversion rate of about 5%. The whole website has a conversion rate of 0.03%. So not only did they increase the conversion, for that particular feature, they increased the conversion by hundreds of times. And this is what we need to focus on. We need to focus on value. So here's the principle number 5. We should focus on testing for value, not testing for functionality. By the way, this has huge implications for you if you are a tester, right? Just to be very clear about this. And we can talk more about this, implications later on. I will jump certain things here, so I'll go straight to this one. Estimation is ways to reduce its impact on your business. Here's where this comes from. A company which I interview on the book, they stopped estimating. Because they didn't estimate, they didn't do contracts either. Now they're losing less money without contracts than they were when they were estimating and bidding. They spend about 20 to 30% of their time doing bids, doing contract negotiations. That is all gone. It disappeared. So great interview. with this guy Sven Ditz, CEO of Zeitgeist in Hamburg. Absolutely mind-blowing. Then here's the key thing for me. When we talk about NoEstimates, for me it's all about measuring the progress. This is your team. The blue line is the velocity over the last 21 sprints. The upper line is your maximum limit or upper limit, and the green line is your lower limit. This is what you've been doing for the last 21 sprints. What's the point of setting a target that is here? This is what companies do, right? When companies go to you and say, hey guys, we need to kind of speed up. But what do you mean? We're already working 10 hours a day. You know, John hasn't seen his wife for 3 weeks. And somebody like product owner or somebody like that will say, well, you guys are just too slow. When I was a software developer, if you're familiar with that story, you know where it goes, right? Here's the point that I'm trying to make, and I'll explain that further in the workshop tomorrow. Setting a target outside system conditions is a waste of time, and it gets everybody pissed. The person who asks for the target is pissed because the target is impossible to reach. The people who hear the request are pissed because they're not being respected. We destroy companies like this, and it starts by destroying teams. This is the problem. Estimates bring dysfunction. Here are 4, wait, there's actually 5. See how well I estimated that? 4 estimate dysfunctions. Estimate bargaining. Are you sure you can't do more? Come on, guys, you can do a little bit more. Internal politics. What's the project with the highest likelihood of getting approved? The one that is better at lying. And if you think this is not true, just look back through your history and look through backlogs of projects that you worked on, and suddenly in the middle of the backlog comes a topic and you go like, what the hell is this topic about? It's not even in our product. Why should we do this? That was a political negotiation to get that project approved. And get this, the better you are at governance, the worse this gets. So there's no winning. If you remove estimates, if you measure the progress based on actual delivered value, politics go away, because how long can you go without proving that you've delivered something? 2 weeks in most cases, right? Oops. Blame shifting. I ask you for an estimate, and then 2 weeks later I go to you, you haven't delivered. Who's at fault here? Right? It's a very useful tool. As a manager, I can ask someone for an estimate, and then I can blame them for not meeting the estimate that they gave me. Of course, if I did some estimate bargaining, I'll really be sure it's their fault. Late changes. There's one thing I talk about in the book. Everybody knows it by scope creep, right? Everybody knows scope creep, right? So I don't call it scope creep. I call it value discovery. Why do we call it scope creep? It's good, guys. It's information that you didn't have before. It's potentially value creating information. It's not scope creeping in, it's value being discovered. And this is another dysfunction that comes from estimates. The moment you have an estimate, you have scope creep, even though in reality what you have is value discovery. And then the sunk cost fallacy. Well, we've already invested 1 million into that project, why not invest more? Here's the thing. Every system where we work is predictable. And in the workshop, we'll look at ways in which we can make it predictable and understand its predictability. But every system is predictable. Every single system out there. The fact that the trains in Finland will be late is entirely predictable. Why aren't we doing anything about the reasons that cause that? So we need to learn to understand systems. And of course, the biggest question for me is, what do I do? Because I need to make decisions. So, very quick story. These guys did an experiment. This is a team at Microsoft. They estimated all of their backlog, like all of the backlog. 1, 3, and 5 were the story points they used. And then they did something which is a good thing to do. They projected the release date. So they looked at the number of items done versus those that were still in the backlog. They projected that, and the release date was 20th of October. Okay, fine. They were about a year ago from it, 6 months or 7 months away from it. So next they did something that I like to call Excel magic. They just went in and changed all the numbers. Find and replace stuff we're all used to. So what was a 3 became a 2, what was a 5 became a 3. It's not even proportional. So what does the projection say? 14th of October. 6 days difference. What? You just changed the estimates. Yeah, and there's no difference. And then they did something which I call NoEstimates, which is just give 1 to everything. Everything is just a 1. What happens? Release date, 29th of September. 29th of September, which is 3 weeks from the worst estimate or projection. That's an 8% error. 8% between the earliest and the latest date. 8% is a hell of a lot better than what the estimate people think is a good estimate. If the error is 8%, you're within the definition of a good estimate. You can just throw estimates away. You lose nothing. I know it sounds incredible, unbelievable, but it's true. And you can do the same yourself. And in the workshop, we'll look at some examples of how to do that. You can take the data of your own projects and do that for yourself. This was the guy that did that experiment, Bill Hanlon at Microsoft. I had an email exchange with him, and he said, after we talked about this experiment, at that point, I stopped thinking that estimating was important. And this will happen to you if you do this. If you just do this very simple thing, which is just project the number of stories completed so far over the long term, you will get the same result as Bill did. So just to wrap up, don't bet your company on methods that fail so often. Hoping that we will be better at estimates is not a good management strategy. That's why I wrote the book. The book is about Carmen. Carmen is a project manager who's been given a project that is life or death. If they win the project, company goes on. If they don't win the project, company dies. Not an easy position to be in. But it gets even better when she meets her boss that says, give me the right estimate. We really need to have the right estimate. What is the right estimate? What do you mean? And that's what the book goes through. It goes through the journey that Carmen goes through to go from traditional project management to NoEstimates in high stakes projects. And there's a lot of techniques there. There's the steps to get to NoEstimates so that you don't have to jump, into cold water head first. That's why I wrote the book. We talk about the 7-step journey to NoEstimates. And it's not only a book, actually. We also wrote Ultimate Guide to Applied Capacity Planning with NoEstimates. So capacity planning is a very common problem companies go through. When they need to make decisions, they need to know what their capacity is. How can you do that with NoEstimates? So there's a pretty long PDF for that. And then I have a contribution from a guy in Singapore that writes about agile contracts. Because that's a big question, right? I mean, we're developing software for someone. How do we get it into the contract? Okay, my recommendation, do what Sven did and get rid of contracts. But if you can't, here's a guide to what kind of contracts there are out there and which ones would suit better to an agile development environment. And there's 9 videos. So the NoEstimates book is actually a very, very large amount of content that is hard to consume, so don't get into it unless you're really, really sure that you want to go through that. But it's also something that I believe can change our industry. I believe that we are no longer in time to try to slightly improve a tool that hasn't worked for the past 50 years. I believe that we have an ethical responsibility towards the people that will come to our industry 5, 10 years, 20 years from now. I have kids. I want them to work in the software industry. I don't want them to work in this software industry. I want to make this a much, much better software industry based on things that, by the way, are not new, but work, unlike estimates. So here's the final principle. Whatever happens, remember this. The transformation starts with you. Thank you very much.